Part 2, Going Electric. This is a terrific Rolling Stones record, the greatest hits from the time. I'm showing it off because it's rare to have it with all the original artwork and all the pictures of the Stones on the inside. And just to show you how great this greatest hits record is, it's got Satisfaction on it, The Last Time, As Tears Go By, It's All Over Now, Play With Fire. This is a terrific record, and it was playing at a party in 1965 in February. And as it's playing, I'm really enjoying it, and there is a young girl sitting next to me, and we start talking about the Rolling Stones. We may have been actually looking through a cover like this, and she really likes the Rolling Stones. So we start talking about the Rolling Stones, and then she's knowledgeable about them, and then she really likes the Beatles. And this was the big Beatle album at the time because Help had come out. So we both liked Help and A Hard Day's Night, and this conversation is going well. And her name is Susan Miller. And here, that's Susan, and that's her best friend, Leslie. Now, these are very, very smart people. Susan ended up going on to Bennington College. You know what they say about the women who go to Bennington. And Leslie ended up at University of Chicago and writing for the New York Times. But this is the first time I've met Susan, and I'm impressed by all that she knows, so I decide to impress her, and I say something like, well, have you read The Beat Generation, Jack Kerouac? And she starts naming, she had read those books. She was ahead of me. She had read Kerouac, Ginsberg. She read Gary Snyder. I didn't even know who he was. And then we started talking about colleges, and she knew about Antioch College and all this stuff, which I thought was really cool. And then she told me that she had seen Joan Baez in concert and Pete Seeger and the Peter, Paul, and Mary. I mean, I was knocked out. And from that day forward, Susan and I began a conversation that lasted for, 8 years. Everything that Susan went through, I went through, and vice versa. We talked about everything and all the changes in art and literature and the culture movement was stuff that Susan and I went through together, and we shared our innermost thoughts about our families. She was my best friend. And Leslie, same thing. So much that happened to us as a group of 4 of us. The other person being my other great friend who went to Power Memorial, who I've talked about before, Dennis. So this is the close-knit group, and we used to love folk music. And every night, we listened to the Jerry White Folk Show. I think it was on a college station from Fairleigh Dickinson University. And the host of the show was a guy by the name of Jerry White. There's Jerry. Very serious folk show, had all the music we really love, like I just mentioned, and Eric Anderson, and just tons of other people, Ian and Sylvia. And Jerry also had every Tuesday night in the summer and the spring, he had a folk show live from the same Palisades amusement park. And all you had to do to see the show was pay a quarter to get in. It was even cheaper if you had a coupon from a Superman comic, if you remember that. So we'd go to these shows and see artists like Dave Van Ronk. And here's one. Richie Havens played there all the time. Anybody know who Richie Havens is? Richie Havens was the opening act at Woodstock. Right? He used to play very rhythmically on the guitar, didn't play individual notes, but played chords and stuff. Very exciting performer, and he covered Dylan particularly well. His Just Like a Woman is one of the best interpretations of Dylan. He just passed away like 2 years ago, but get his greatest hits. You won't be disappointed. There was another very idiosyncratic artist. I think we were the only ones who knew who he was, well, certainly today. His name was Patrick Skye, and he was a pure folk singer. It was kind of like listening to W.C. Fields sing folk songs. He'd crack jokes. He was humorous. He made like 2 records. I have no idea where he is today. I read somewhere that he started becoming a guitar maker, and he lives in his home in the mountains somewhere. But anyway, Patrick Skye was one of those people, and that was of that folk generation. And we used to like going to see Patrick Skye. And once at Palisades Park, these two beautiful folk singers came up on the stage. They were like a year older than us. They were stunning. I think they were just out of college or college girls, and their name was the Simon Sisters. And that was Carly Simon and her sister. Now, I wanted to share some of the things that I knew with Susan. So we went to see a James Bond movie, From Russia with Love. And the reason I became so hooked on James Bond was because of President Kennedy. See, this was a different time in our country. Kennedy, who we all loved, was going on vacation, and the press asked him, "What are you going to do on your vacation?" He says, "Well, I'm going to sail a lot, and I'm going to read some books, and I want to catch up on my James Bond books because I really like Ian Fleming and James Bond." Well, that was good enough for me because if the president was reading it, I wanted to read it. And I started to read every single James Bond book. You know, Dr. No, Live and Let Die. I don't think our president has ever read a James Bond book from beginning to end. I don't think he sat through a movie. That, by the way, From Russia with Love is great James Bond. Now, Great Expectations is another movie we went to see. My father recommended it. Since I had loved the book so much, we went into the city and saw this, which is an outstanding David Lean movie. And this is just the kind of thing that we used to do. A little side note, you know, flash forward about 30 years. I've got two daughters, Allison and Jackie. I'm trying to give them a really good film education. And so I figured Charles Dickens, David Lean, great storyteller. Let's watch Great Expectations. Now, Dad made a big mistake. I didn't remember the movie correctly. And as tranced as we were and hooked in the story, in the last act, Mrs. Havisham catches fire. And when you have an artist as powerful as David Lean, those kids were scared. I mean, they went vertical, screamed, and left the room. "Mom, Mom!" Joanne came in and read me the riot act. So I'm still sorry I did this. Jackie, I know I've apologized. I'm really sorry again about Great Expectations. I'm also sorry about Jurassic Park. I know you weren't ready for that one. Now, Susan turned me on to Greta Garbo. She loved Greta Garbo, and this is a wonderful movie, Ninotchka. It's written by Billy Wilder and directed by Ernst Lubitsch. Now, how hip is Susan Miller? You know, Leslie also. I mean, I didn't learn this stuff till film school. This is one of Susan's favorite movies. She could quote it. Another movie that Susan and Leslie took me to see. They loved this movie, Breakfast at Tiffany's. I mean, this was a very romantic movie for women of that era. Holly Golightly was a character that was a modern woman and had great appeal at the time. What's kind of interesting about this movie is we remember the good parts extremely fondly, and it's the kind of movie you block out the bad stuff, like Mickey Rooney being a Chinese guy. Anyway, I'm not going to give you analysis of this, but if you go to Trailers from Hell, I talk about this movie. Then, since we both love the Beatle movies, Help and A Hard Day's Night, Susan had read that the winner of the Cannes Film Festival that year was Richard Lester, you know, a guy who now is a favorite director of mine. So we went to see this, The Knack. Another kind of movie that for me left a huge mark. I must have seen this movie 15 times over the next 2 years. What it was is this character, Michael Crawford, he can't get laid. He can't talk to girls, but his roommate here, and this is all exaggerated in the Richard Lester style with high-con black and white photography, fast cutting. This guy has women on a long line all the way up to his room and decides he's going to give him advice. Well, in the course of that advice, our hero finds out that his friend is a hollow person, and that's not the life for him. And so when he meets Rita Tushingham, he finds a woman that he can share things with, and at the end of the movie, they're together. And I identified with this movie, and I really identified with the Michael Crawford character. And along with this, I became, again, more serious about the kind of film study I want to do, and I started reading books about film and media. And this is probably the first film book I ever bought, The Liveliest Art. And I probably did a paper on it for high school, you know. And we weren't ready for that in high school. This was one of my early books for that. And another one, Cinema as Art. And I read this book Understanding Media by Marshall McLuhan. Marshall McLuhan was a big deal at those times. I didn't understand this book, but it was very impressive to read it. Now, one of the people that Susan loved, and to get to it, I'm going to describe to you the fact that she had gone to see Joan Baez. And in talking about that concert, she told me that Bob Dylan had come up on the stage. And Joan and Bob had sung together, and then they introduced two of their closest friends, Joan Baez's sister and the sister's husband, Richard Farina. And that's what they looked like. Now, who wouldn't want to be? Well, if you're me, you want to be beatniks, because there they are on 4th Street and look like that. And so I went out and I bought their album, which was on Vanguard at the time. And it's called Celebrations of a Gray Day. It's not that well known. The big song on it is Pack Up Your Sorrows. He played dulcimer and guitar. It's a fascinating record. It's got a beautiful sound, wonderful harmonies. She's got a lovely voice. There's actually some electric music on it and fascinating instrumentation. All the rhythmic stuff was done by an artist named Bruce Langhorne, who played guitar and played different sized tambourines. And he had this big one that he was famous for playing. Little side note, when Dylan sings about Mr. Tambourine Man, he's talking about Bruce Langhorne, because Bruce Langhorne played on a couple of Dylan records. And the next album that they did was Reflections in a Crystal Wind. This is an autobiographical record, and as I learned about Richard Farina, he was a fascinating person, kind of a world traveler, ladies' man, you know, half grew up with Greek parents and was actually had to go before the House of Un-American Activities. Kind of the guy who I thought was romantic, and you know, I wanted to be Richard Farina. And then I found out that he was writing a book about his life, kind of a fictionalized work, and it was called Big Down So Long It Looks Like Up to Me. And it was coming out, on April 30th, which is my birthday, which is also Mimi Farina's birthday. Maybe that's why he chose that date. And so excited, I went and I ordered. I wish I knew where the rest of the cover was. I ordered this at the bookstore, so on May 1st I would have it, you know, because on April 30th they were having a big party for the book in Big Sur, where he lived with his sister and Joan Baez. And I guess it was a wild party, and everyone was having a wonderful time. And Richard got on a motorcycle with his best friend and went out for a joyride late at night. And we read the next day in the New York Times that they had lost control of the motorcycle and had gone off one of those tall cliffs in Big Sur, and they were both killed, his friend and Richard Farina. And it was a great loss. He was an artist just coming into his own, and in my life it was like someone I knew. I mean, especially after reading this book over and over again. So it's like another tragedy. I mean, look at this couple. How beautiful were they? So that was a part of learning about life, you know, growing up and having heroes and heroines. And to sort of complete the circle, a couple of years later, there was a festival, and I found this picture, and it's from 2002 or so. So there's Mimi Farina, Judy Collins, and Joan Baez together. They're probably in their 50s in that. And Mimi died shortly after that of lung cancer. You know, life goes on. Now, another kind of music, you know, that I was getting into, and I was crazy about this because I heard it on the Jerry White Folk Show, was what's called Jug Band music. And this is a lot of stuff from Memphis, which is where it started. Now, what is Jug Band music? In its original form, which was played only by African Americans and out of Memphis, it was kind of a makeshift band thing. You had a wash tub bass with one string and a jug, which you played into, which gave notes, low notes, like a tuba, and a washboard that you had thimbles on your hand, and that was rhythm, and guitar and banjo. And the Memphis Jug Band were a hit group at that time. I mean, only on what was called race records. They had songs like On the Road Again, which is still sung today, Stealin', and like Cocaine Habit Blues. So I didn't know this at the time. I've actually been to Memphis in honor of this group and found out about it because white college kids started playing jug band music. And that's how I found out about it, through the Jerry White Folk Show. So there's your guitar. There's a washboard, you know. There is the wash tub bass. And this music is very funny. When these guys did it, they did a lot of traditional songs and a lot of jazz covers from the era. They did songs like Beat-a-Lum Bum. I like this record, but this is not the record. And the next record was the best of their records, and they did something very, very smart. They added a woman to the group. There she is. Her name was Maria D'Amato, and she was living in Little Italy and left home, walked 2 blocks to Greenwich Village, and she became a beatnik with all these guys. And she had a wonderful voice, and she played the fiddle and a lot of other instruments. That's Maria D'Amato. I mean, you're starting to see what I saw in this group after that, because this is their best record. It's called the Jim Question. It's called Jug Band Music, and on it, Maria D'Amato sings "I'm a Woman," which is a Lieber and Stoller song, and just kills it. This is a really, really good record, totally unique. And they also do this song that I love called "Washington at Valley." Well, I'm sorry, the song off this one I love is "Blues My Naughty Sweetie Gives to Me." Now, I seen this group, and I was so enamored by this group that instead of going to my senior prom, really, I went to the Village and to the cafe I go to see them, and I got there really early so I could sit down front and look at Maria. So I was a big, Maria D'Amato fan in those days, and she went on, and the band broke up, and she got married, and she changed her name to her married name to Maria Moldauer. Yes, that Maria Moldauer. That's the person who sang "Midnight at the Oasis," which was a big hit in the 70s, and she had many songs that were big hits. And she always stayed true to her vision of music. Over the years, she did this blues record. She did a record in New Orleans, and then years and years go by, and I'm still, collecting her records, and I'm the executive producer of Crossing Jordan. And on that show, I would pick the music that we had, and I heard this record, Richland Woman, which is one of her really, really good records, a lot of classic blues and jazz on it, and I had us license 2 songs to put on the show. And I guess, she got some money for that. And her publisher calls me up and says, Maria's really happy you did that. Thank you very much. And she's in town. Would you like to go see her play at the Universal Amphitheater? Of course, we were on the Universal lot. So I got tickets for us. And he said, would you like to meet Maria? And I said, sure. And he said, well, why doesn't she come? Since she's at Universal, she'll come by your office. Maria Moldauer's coming to my office. And when she gets there, I couldn't help myself. I started telling her about the crush I had on her when I was in high school. She was so nice. So this is Jug Band Music, and she signed the back. Alan, thanks for liking me so many, all these years, right? Well, she's still out there touring, and she does a show which is about her life, and has slides up of all the people she's known. She's an old friend of Bob Dylan's, and she's a musicologist, and she talks about all the types of music that influenced her. So I'm listening to the radio one day, and I hear the song, "Believe in the Magic of a Rock and Roll. Believe in the magic of a young girl's soul. Believe in the magic that will set you free. Do you believe in magic?" It's the Lovin' Spoonful. So they were influenced by jug band music. In fact, John Sebastian, who was the main person in Lovin' Spoonful, had been in the Even Dozen Jug Band with Marie D'Amato, right? So we bought this record, and this is a terrific record. It has 2 hits on it, "Do You Believe in Magic?" "Did You Ever Have to Make Up Your Mind?" and a really good blues, because they had an excellent guitar player, Zalyanovsky. It's called "Night Owl Blues." You probably, these songs and stuff. And okay, here's how we were. We would hang out in the Village, and we're walking up and down the streets, just looking at the girls and having a good time. And we see in the window of this store, the Shed House, T-shirts like this. And these guys lived in Greenwich Village. They had bought these T-shirts at the Shed House So what do you think we bought that day at the Shed House? Now their next album had a huge hit. What a Day for a Daydream. There it is. And they actually covered Jug Band music on this record. They still kept ascending. And their next record, well, there's not a summer that goes by where when the temperature gets to be above 90 degrees that we don't hear Summer in the City. And that was their song, oh, Hums and Lovin' Spoonful. And we went to see them in Central Park in the summer of '66 at the, it was called the Schaefer Beer Festival. It was right at the Woolman skating rink, which they didn't have ice on, but they put us up a stage, and there's the Lovin' Spoonful. And had a great set, and at the finale, they played Summer in the City. And you're looking at the stage, and you see the skyline of New York and Central Park South. So shout out to Lovin' Spoonful, a band I really liked. They also did this sampler for Electra. I had showed you that one, Folk Song 65. Well, they did an electric one because Electra was getting into rock music, and they thought they were going to sign the Lovin' Spoonful. So there's, 4 Lovin' Spoonful songs that Spoonful should have signed with Electra. There's Paul Butterfield, there's Al Cooper, and there was a guitar player who had that same driving tone and sound of Al Cooper. And so I remembered, I like this. His name was Eric Clapton. And this is a kind of a makeshift group. You might want to remember that name, Eric Clapton. Now, it was summer coming. And we read that Bob Dylan was going to be in concert at Forest Hills Tennis Stadium. And we had to see him. And got all my money, and we bought tickets. And these were expensive tickets. We thought for $5, we're going to be, right up there on the stage. And we were counting the days till August 25th when Dylan would be playing. In the meantime, I got a job, a summer job. I became an ice cream man. That's right. I mean, an ice cream man. I had an ice cream truck, and I used to drive it around and sell ice cream. It was kind of like Good Humor, but cheesier. And I used to go out by bus to, I think it was like Bergenfield, New Jersey, and they'd give you the truck and fill it up with the popsicles, fudgicles, and those drumstick cones, and pack it with dry ice, and that would keep the ice cream cold all day. And you drove around Cliffside Park and Englewood Cliffs and Fort Lee and Tenafly and Teaneck, and you probably sold about $25 worth of ice cream, and then you return it at the end of the day. But on weekends, they let you keep the truck. And they packed extra dry ice in it. So on Fridays and Saturday nights, we would get in the truck and drive it into New York City. Find the bodega and buy beer, because we were only 16 and 17 years old, took a little fast talking. And we packed it with beer, and we'd come back, and this beer, after sitting on dry ice, would be ice cold. Put on a Rolling Stones record. That was the summer of Paint It Black. And drink beer. I mean, it was a wonderful summer, except for one thing, one problem. Now, to be clear about this ice cream truck, it was a piece of shit. It had 3 gears, of which, only 2 of them worked. First gear did not work. But it didn't deter me, because even though I was wearing my white uniform and everything, I started wearing a beret. I don't have one. But this was the look, post-Beat Generation knowledge. This was the look that I was trying to get across. Jaunty in my ice cream truck with the white uniform and my portable radio, which I had up to full volume. Driving this piece of shit, if you were on a hill and you had to get the truck going, at a red light, you couldn't have a car behind you, because trying to get it started in second gear, you just sort of drift down the hill, and you could back into whoever was there. And the brakes were worse than the gearbox. On one side was a lot stronger to the other. It was really hard to not get it to lock up. So I'm driving down Route 9W towards the end of the summer, which is a pretty fast 4-lane road between Fort Lee and Englewood Cliffs, and I'm going down the hill about 45 miles an hour, and the car in front of me stops to make a turn with no turn signal. And so I hit the brakes, and in my excitement, I hit them too hard, and they lock up, and the truck goes out of control. It starts pulling to the side, and I try to You're not supposed to steer into it, but I'm 17 years old. And all of a sudden, it starts spinning like a pendulum because all the weight in the back where the freezer is driving it in circles, and it goes across the highway and hits an oncoming car, which sends the car off the road into a telephone pole. And on the impact, the freezer doors open, and popsicles, fudgicles, and drumsticks are spread all across 9W. I go bouncing through the weeds and get out. Oh my God, this is terrible. And I run to the people in the car, and thank God, the car is a mess. It's going to be a fortune in insurance, but no one was seriously hurt. There was like 6 people in that car on the way to Palisades Amusement Park. There was no seatbelt. It's a wonder I wasn't killed. Now the cops arrive. And I'm wearing my beret, so, I go back to the truck and dump the beret and turn off the radio. And I'm being interrogated by the cops, and Mr. Ice Cream shows up, the guy who owns the company. Boy, I can't describe how pissed he was about this, looking out at 9W with all his ice cream popsicles spread out there. And he fired me right on the spot, and I had to get home, any way I could. So that was the end of my career as an ice cream man. Maybe I'll go back to it someday. But August 25th was at hand, and we are going to go into the city now to see Bob Dylan at Forest Hills Tennis Stadium. So Susan and Leslie are in the city, and they're going to head from there to Forest Hills. And Dennis and I get on the bus and go across the George Washington Bridge, take the subway. Now, Dennis really knew the city, and I gave Dennis some bad advice, and we took the wrong subway. And so we had to get out, and then we got back in, so now we lost some money. We lost our token money. But we are really excited to see Dylan, who's out there at the stadium probably while we're riding out there doing a sound check. And that's Bob Dylan, and that's Al Kooper. Now, what we didn't know was that Dylan had plans for this concert. He had played recently at the Newport Folk Festival, and he had played and gone electric. In fact, Mike Bloomfield had played with him, and there was a big stink about him bringing rock and roll music into a folk area. It was a very political act in those days. But since there was no rock press, we didn't know anything about this. So he's out there rehearsing now with this band. Now, this is not just any band. This guy, the guitar player, his name is Robbie Robertson, from the band The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, music from Big Pink. That is the drummer, Levon Helm, up on Cripple Creek. These are great musicians. This is Harvey Brooks, who played bass on Highway 61 and Bringing It All Back Home. And kind of hidden there is Al Kooper, and there is Bob Dylan in that great look he had with the sunglasses and the wild hair. So we get to to Forest Hills Tennis Stadium, and really excited about how it's going to be great. We're going to have terrific seats. And our seats are like, way back. We're in the bleachers for $5, surrounded by college kids in their preppy clothes and everything. And out comes Jerry White to introduce the show. Right? Our folk music hero, Jerry White, who passed on all his knowledge of folk music. So Dylan goes out there, and he starts to sing. He opens with, she's got everything she needs. She's an artist. She don't look back, we're entranced. And as the set goes on, there's a lot of restlessness in the crowd because Dylan wasn't singing old songs. He wasn't singing the old protest songs. He was singing new stuff and stuff that the audience didn't necessarily know, like Desolation Row, which is a 10-minute song. And it was during Desolation Row that people would start running at the stage, trying to disrupt the show, which caused Dylan to turn on the audience and sing, "It's All Over Now, Baby Blue." How prophetic. And he finished the first half with Mr. Tambourine Man. Lights came up, and we knew there was going to be a second half, so we went and got some beer. And this is the first time Dennis and I had bought beer at a concert, and, they didn't check our ID, and we bought 4 beers, and we're drinking beers in the stands with Susan and Leslie, and the lights go down, the spotlight comes out, and out comes the announcer, but it's not Jerry White. It's a guy in a bright red suit, and it's my old mentor, my guru, Murray the K from the Swingin' Soiree. He's not dressed like he's wearing a bright red suit, you can imagine. And he steps to the mic, and I'm going, what the? And he says, all right, we're here to see here Mia Surrey. We're here to see Bia Surrey, Bobby Zillin, and booze, because Murray was the sellout. He represented rock and roll, and they wanted pure folk music. Well, Murray had a great introduction. I'm going to read it to you, what he said. He says, and the audience is really restless now. He says to them, it's not folk. Oh. It's not rock. It's a new thing called Dylan. And bang, they break into Tombstone Blues. And they are rocking it. And to the audience, this was the loudest thing they ever heard. I mean, this is kind of the size of what they had, their little lamps and everything. But the audience was really pissed at hearing this rock music. And all around me, these college kids, are getting very upset because Dylan goes into Maggie's farm. I ain't gonna work on Maggie's farm no more. It's kind of clear where he's headed. Now, during It Ain't Me, Babe, on the chorus, it ain't, no, it ain't me, babe, it ain't me you're looking for. They all start booing, no. And I look over at Susan and Leslie, and Susan's got like tears in her eyes. She's going to cry. They're booing her hero. Dennis and I are confused. I mean, on one hand, we identify with the college kids and we like the protest songs, but this isn't right. Dylan is our hero. And at the end of the set, he turns to everyone and gets up on the mic and he says, this song is for all of you out there. And he sings Ballad of a Thin Man. And you probably know these lyrics. You've been with all the professors and they all liked your looks. You've been through all of F. Scott Fitzgerald books. You're very well read. It's well known. Something is happening here and you don't know what it is. Do you, Mr. Jones? And it was like an arrow straight into our hearts. I mean, he was way ahead of us. And as Robbie Robertson and him, play out the great guitar solos, they all walk off the stage and it's silent. I mean, there's booze and stuff, but he kind of rocked everyone's world. And then he comes back for the encore. And he turns it up and kicks into my favorite song of all time, Like a Rolling Stone, right? 2 weeks later, this album comes out, Highway 61 Revisited. 61, Highway 61. Just recently, on my 70th birthday, Joanne and I flew to Memphis and we drove down Highway 61, followed the music trail and the blues trail all the way to New Orleans. Now, this is my favorite record of all time. It's got Like a Rolling Stone on it. Takes a Lot to Laugh, Takes a Train to Cry, Ballad of a Thin Man. That's the one I'm talking about. Just like Tom Thumb Blues, When You're Lost in the Rain in Juarez, and it's Easter time too, and Desolation Row. Now, how much do I love this record? When I made Rock and Roll High School and Miss Togar sets the records on fire, I burnt one of these. Not this one. This is my original one. Now, the concert's over and everyone's filing out and we take the bus home. Well, first we take the subway. We took the subway all the way to Port Authority building in the Bronx. And we're pretty silent on the subway. No one's talking much. And then when we get there, we start to go to take the bus and we realize that between the beers and buying too many tokens, we don't have enough money to get home on the bus. So we got about 25, 50 cents. So we decide the only thing we can do is to walk home across the George Washington Bridge. So it's a beautiful summer night. And when you walk across the bridge, you're on the south side of the bridge, so you have a view all the way down the Hudson River to Manhattan. And the buildings are there, and the skyline of Manhattan, and the skyline of Jersey, and the moon is out, and it's just shimmering on the water as we walk across the bridge. And we're sharing all that we've been through that night. It kind of broke the ice because it was special. And we get to the center of the bridge, and Susan says, how much money we got? We took out the money. She gave everyone a piece of the money. She says, we're going to remember this always. Let's make a wish. We all made a wish and threw our money off the bridge. And it's falling down. It's pretty high all the way to the river. And we watched the until it disappeared from our view, and we walked the rest of the way home. And it's a night that Susan was right. That's one of the great things about Susan Miller. She had a way of seeing the long view of things and putting it in the right perspective. And whatever the angst had happened at the concert, we had been somewhere. We had been somewhere and we had learned something. And so I had made that wish. And in a way, the wish is like a line from Bob Dylan's Dream. I wish in vain that we could sit simply in that room again. And my wish came true. Because here we are, 3 years ago, getting together for lunch. That's Susan, that's Leslie, that's Dennis, that's me. And we still share so much. We had all gone electric, we're still electric, and we're here. And I think this is a pretty good time to end this and move on to the next chapter. It's 12th grade now for me. Time to start thinking about college. What am I going to do with my life? My guidance counselor, Mr. Cancellosi, has some ideas that I don't agree with. So the school wants me to go, we're on different paths. School says go right. I'm going left. And there's some stuff that happens there. And then, there are certain days when you just want to take a snow day. You remember that? If you're from the east, it snows so hard the school closes. There I am on my sled taking a snow day, deserved snow day. Well, Susan and Leslie and Dennis start taking snow days because we have more important things to do, like go to the Bleecker Street Cinema, and this happens to me. 8.5. Asa Nisi Masa. Next time, you'll find out what that means. All right. Thank you. Thank you for sitting through both chapters.